Aaron.
Yeah.
Why didn't you say it the first time I said Aaron?
Because it's pronounced Aaron?
You done messed up, Aaron!
Aaron is here. Welcome back, everyone, for more SPTV, where every day is a great day not to be in a cult. Not a great day to be a Scientologist today, folks. Not a great day to be a Scientologist. There's going to be a very recurring ongoing theme on this channel of exposing the ways that Scientology engages in trafficking. That includes labor trafficking. That includes sex trafficking. A couple days ago, I did a video about the close to near 30 lawsuits against that have been filed against the Mormon Church by a legal team in California. And I did a video reviewing a podcast these attorneys did on an episode of the Mormon Stories podcast. And I analyzed how the litigation against the Mormon Church, a church that is 100 times bigger, wealthier, and more powerful than Scientology, all the ways in which the litigation against the Mormon Church, you could conduct the exact same litigation against the Church of Scientology. And I believe that is exactly what is going to happen. And I believe that that type of litigation is how Scientology will fall. One of the things I have done on this channel over the last several years is call out by name known Scientologist pedophiles. And the greatest thing that could ever happen is for one of these individuals to try and sue me, because Scientology is such a small community that the discovery would be absolutely devastating to the individuals and to Scientology. Because as these lawyers explain, the lawyers that are litigating against the Mormon Church right now, an organization like Scientology, by creating a closed system where policy set from on high prevents members from reporting abuse to the proper legal civil authorities. And the fact that the organization itself benefits reputationally and financially from creating this closed system that prevents reporting and allows such abuse to continue to occur is sex trafficking. And so I think it's all the more important to continue to call out the instances in Scientology where members are known to have engaged in this type of behavior, and Scientology has covered it up, has benefited reputationally and financially, and is therefore engaged in sex trafficking. Okay. So tonight we are calling out the husband of high-level Scientologist known online as the Pasta Queen. Nadia Munno is her name. She is married to another very high-level Scientologist and former Sea Org member named Brooke Zimur, who has been accused of sexual crimes against a 5-year-old girl. Yes. Yes, indeed. Okay, let's get into the deed. This will not be a very long video. And I've got the info here, and I've got some screens to share with you. Okay, first we have the Pasta Queen herself, Nadia Munno. I believe she's even got a show on Amazon Prime, you guys, or Amazon Video, an Amazon show. Her name might be Nadia Munno, but that is not how she is known in Scientology. She is known as Nadia Zimur. And Nadia does have a pretty small Facebook presence. And you can see in our small community, we have 21 mutual friends. So even though on Facebook, she's known as Nadia Munno, at least on that profile, in Scientology, I tell you, she is very much known as Nadia Zimur. So you can see here, this is weird, right? Because the earliest record that I have of Nadia finishing a Scientology service as documented in Scientology's own magazines is back in 2005. But a new Scientologist does not do OT preparations. OT preparations is a higher level service. And so I don't know how long Nadia's been in Scientology. I don't know if she was born and raised in Scientology. I don't believe she was. And if anyone out there does know how Nadia got into Scientology, where she joined, how she got in, please let me know at growingupin.scientology@gmail.com. But you can see that Nadia is a high-level Scientologist. Let's take a look at this. She got a lot of her auditing at St. Hill in East Grinstead in the UK. OT preparation. She did her OT preparations in St. Hill. She then came to Clearwater, Florida, where she did professional auditor training. Not terribly uncommon. I'm sorry, not terribly common for a public Scientologist. Not unheard of, but the amount of professional auditor training that Nadia has done, it's actually quite unusual for a public Scientologist. So she finished all of her academy levels. She actually finished her internship. That's somewhat uncommon. She finished her New Era Dianetics auditor course, her Class 5 graduate course, her New Era Dianetics internship, and she attested to the state of clear. Again, she did her OT preps for a second time, and she started the OT levels. So again, she was still in England when she learned about Xenu and the body thetans and the volcanoes and the Galactic Confederacy and all that good stuff. She did new OT4. I do not know why she's listed here as finishing it twice. Maybe it's just an error in the database here. She did the superpower rundown. That can only be done here in Clearwater, Florida. And then, typical Scientology style, she restarted her auditor training from the bottom up. That's probably thanks to the Golden Age of Tech 2 that came out in 2014. And she did some specialist auditor training. Again, very uncommon for a public Scientologist. Oh my God, she did case supervisor training as well. Nadia is one of the most highly trained public Scientologists I know of, who does not earn their living as a professional auditor. So I think that's very interesting. Okay, let's take a look at Nadia's husband, accused pedophile Brooke Zimur. Hello, Brooke. How are you, Brooke? We've never met, but I do know your brother Dan Zimur, and I've always wondered what happened to him. He used to work at Scientology's International Management Base. I met him when he was on a special project in Clearwater back in about maybe 1995, and I've never heard or seen of him since. If anybody knows what happened to Dan Zimur, please let me know at growingupinScientology@gmail.com. Brooke is somewhat of a big businessman, it seems. He was also a highly trained Sea Org auditor. I don't know exactly what his company does, but maybe you guys want to look into that. This is his LinkedIn profile. Let's see what it says Brooke Zimur has done in Scientology. It looks like he was at the AOSH UK. So that is the Sea Org base in Saint Hill in East Grinstead. And I'll tell you why it looks like that in a moment here. So he did some advanced auditor training. He did some specialist auditor training. He achieved the state of clear. He then restarted his auditor training in 2003. He then restarted his auditor training again. He redid all of his auditor training. This coursework takes years and years and years and years and years. And look, he actually finishes it all in basically 1 year. That shows you that he was a Sea Org member. But I'll give you more evidence here in a moment. He starts his OT levels in 2003. That's when he learns about Xenu, the body thetans, the hydrogen bombs, and all that good stuff. And then, he does the minister's course, OT4, Hubbard Senior Sec Checker course. Public never do these courses. And this is what gives it away. In 2004, in Clearwater, Florida, he finishes the Class 9 Auditor course. The Class 9 Auditor course is a course that can only be done by Sea Org members. That is where you learn to audit OT5. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that Brooke Zimur was an outer org trainee from AOSH UK doing his auditor training at the Flagland base. He finishes his Class 9 internship in 2004. Oh my God, he does the professional word clearer course. Jesus, this guy's done everything. And then he leaves. So he finishes his training. I'm guessing he goes back to AOSH UK as a Sea Org Class 9 auditor. The most highly trained auditor you can be outside of Clearwater, Florida. Only Flag has Class 10, 11, and 12 auditors. All other Sea Org bases can only have Class 9 auditors. Okay, so then I'm guessing at some point here, he leaves the Sea Org. He moves to Clearwater, Florida, where he is now a public Scientologist. And as a public Scientologist, he is now once again redoing all of his auditor training. And I do have to wonder if maybe he and Nadia twinned up on their auditor training. Well, let's see. He's doing his academy levels as recently as 2024. What was Nadia doing? Okay, Nadia doesn't have entries as recent as that. Okay, so maybe they're not twinning. Okay, so Brooke Zimur is a highly trained Sea Org auditor. He's done the superpower rundown. I'm told he's actually on OT7 now. Okay, so let me tell you how this information came to me. When I was doing videos about Emily Armstrong and her being the new lead singer of Linkin Park, amongst the videos that I did about Emily, I did a video showing a bunch of Emily's friends who themselves were former Sea Org members, just like Emily Armstrong used to be a former member, a child in the cadet org. In Scientology, there's this Sea organization. They signed the billion-year contracts. When younger kids were allowed to come into the Sea Org with their parents, the kids would be put into the cadet org, and they would be separated from the adults, and they would be kept at a different facility. Emily Armstrong used to be one of those kids. Emily Armstrong's mother still works in the Sea organization for David Miscavige. So anyway, one of the videos that I did was some ex-Sea Org member girls who had been sat down by Scientology and produced a video basically calling two other ex-Scientology women who had been on Leah Remini's show, and their episode was about the sexual assault that they experienced as children in the Sea organization. And Scientology sat down and produced videos of these women's former friends basically calling them liars. And one of the young women who sat down and did a video was named Diva Gustafsson. And I'm going to show you just a very quick excerpt of what Diva had to say here.
We've been friends a long time, and we've been pretty close lately, and we go on hikes together and talk about everything. And when I met with her last, she didn't mention anything. And I personally feel like Mike Rinder and Leah Remini definitely got to Sina and Miriam and are using them as like little puppets. And I think that they're getting them to say exactly what they want them to say. And I feel very sad for Sina and Miriam because I think they definitely fell into the wrong hands.
Okay, so that was Diva. Now, Diva herself used to be in the cadet org and was a Sea Org member. I believe she was an actual official Sea Org member as well later, but I could be wrong about that. But nonetheless, I was contacted by a guy that I was in the Sea Org with in Los Angeles, who he himself had also been in the cadet org. And he was absolutely horrified and disgusted to see a cadet who had herself been sexually assaulted at the age of 5. Being used by Scientology to call two other to basically call these two other women liars. And not only how disgusting it is that Scientology would use a child sex abuse victim to call two other child sex abuse victims liars, but that Diva herself would participate in that. And I'm not going to reveal the identity of the person who contacted me, but I know him very well, and everyone involved would know him very well. And but for reasons I'm not gonna give his name for now, until the time comes that he would be okay with that. But I am gonna read you what he told me about Brooke, Zimur, and Diva. Okay, so he says, hey, I have some information about Diva Gustafsson. All right, let me bring it over here. Before the kids and the cadets were at the ranch, we lived in the dormitories at the AB, which is the Anthony building. And I'm going to show you where that is in a second. We lived in the dormitories at the AB, and we studied and worked at the ATA. Now, so the AB is the Anthony building. The ATA is the Apollo Training Academy. The ATA no longer exists, but the AB certainly still does exist. And I want to show this to you just so you have an idea. Okay, the red dot on the map here is L. Ron Hubbard Way in Hollywood. Okay, and if we zoom in, the bottom of L. Ron Hubbard Way goes to Fountain Avenue. And if we, let's see, am I going to be able to do this right? Bear with me, guys. The Anthony building is basically about a mile to the west. And here we go. Here it is right here. This building goes a little bit under the radar in Hollywood. This is the building where almost all of middle management Sea Org members live. And at the time, it's where the kids lived as well. It is an absolute shithole inside this building. But that's where it is. Not that far from LRH Way at all, as you can see. And the ATA, the Apollo Trading Academy, to my understanding, was right across the street from LRH Way. It wasn't called LRH Way then. Basically, right here where this little lot where it says 4812. That's my understanding of where the ATA was. So now you can see where these kids were walking. Okay. So he says, we would all walk together, the kids, down Fountain Avenue from the AB to the ATA early in the mornings. When Diva Gustafsson was about 5 years old, she was sexually assaulted by another cadet by the name of Brooke Zimur. Brooke was about 13 years old at the time, give or take. I remember being 13 years old. And in my mind, a 13-year-old sexually assaulting a 5-year-old, that's a pedophile. Okay, this isn't two underage kids messing around. Okay. Okay. Diva was sexually assaulted by a cadet named Brooke Zimur, who was about 13 years old at the time, give or take, at the Anthony building in her dormitory around 1990. Currently, Brooke Zimur is an OT7 who lives in Florida. To be specific about what happened to Diva, Brooke Zimur went into one of the girls' dormitories when it was lights out sleep time, where Diva lived, and Brooke Zimur started touching and feeling her body under the blanket. Diva woke up during the sexual assault and screamed at Brooke and reported it to Heather and Kathleen. I have the last names of Heather and Kathleen, but just to make David Miscavige's day a little more interesting, I'm not going to reveal the last names of Heather and Kathleen. Just to throw a little wrench into the works over there. Watching Diva and the other former ranchers deny Sina's sexual assault claims is absolutely narcissistic and downright evil. Sexual assault and other forms of abuse occurred many times, both at the ATA and at the ranch. The ranch, both the Int Ranch and the PAC Ranch, PAC, PAC is what Scientology refers to as the Sea Org base on LRH Way. Both the Int Ranch and the PAC Ranch were absolutely fucked beyond comprehension. There was no real oversight. All of the kids were starved of love and care and attention from our own parents, or just having a normal childhood. If you want to get an understanding of what it was like being at both the Int Ranch and the Pack Ranch, just read the book Lord of the Flies. The Pack Ranch was worse simply because there were way more kids and much less adults, and we were not surrounded by Sea Org adults. Our schooling was 95% Scientology and Sea Org literature. The other 5% was basic reading, writing, and math. And I mean very basic. Keep up the good fight. And boy, do I have a lot more stories to tell. So the person who sent me this email, I've known him for a long time. He was in the Sea Org in LA when I was in the Sea Org in LA. And he, in my opinion, is an example of the dozens and dozens and dozens of people that are in Scientology, technically still in good standing, under the radar, not declared, haven't publicly spoken out, who, when the time comes, and when the familial connections that are keeping so many of these people tied to Scientology are no longer there, you're going to see a whole new avalanche of people of roughly my generation, my age, even though I was never in the cadet org. I was never in the Sea Org as a child. I was on a Sea Org base as a child from 13 to 15, but not a Sea Org member. You're going to see a whole other generation or avalanche of people, wave of people of roughly my generation coming forward with so many more of the types of horrific stories you've heard from the people who have already spoken out. And so it's also, you know, what he described is the essence of a closed system where abuse against children is not reported to the authorities, is not within that system even capable of being reported to the authorities. By nature of the fact that nothing gets reported to the authorities, there is no external oversight of any kind whatsoever. The abuse is allowed to continue. By keeping the abuse hidden from the public, the organization itself benefits in terms of reputation, membership, and money. And the fact that the organization itself benefits by preventing this type of behavior from being exposed and thereby allowing the behavior to continue is sex trafficking. And that's why stories like this are so important to be made known. You can see that Brooke was later promoted and rewarded. In Scientology, being allowed to do full-time auditor training, especially up to that high level, is considered within Scientology a huge reward. So, you know, they have this kid who sexually assaulted a 5-year-old, and they go, you know, Scientology fixed that. He did an ethics cycle. He did lower conditions. He got some auditing on it. He did a sec check. He got some false purpose rundown. Yes, the very nature and essence of Scientology, where they think only Scientology can actually fix what's wrong with a person that causes them to commit crimes against children, it would actually be a violation of Scientology's principles to turn this person over to the authorities, because then Scientology solutions would not be able to be applied to them. That is how Scientologists, on some level, justify not involving the police. But the truth is, the policy about not involving the police is just something L. Ron Hubbard came up with to protect Scientology. They've managed to dress it all up with a bunch of other decorations to make it seem like there's a really, really, really good reason for it. It's for the benefit of the being. In order to help that being, you have to be able to apply Scientology. If they're in prison, you can't help them with Scientology. That would be a violation of keeping Scientology working and a suppressive act. Scientologists can justify things in the most incredible ways. Okay, that is the info that I have on this. Let's go through some starred comments and we'll wrap this up. Christine C. I thought she was a cool cook until I heard she and her husband are diehard Scientologists. I even have her cookbook from a number of years ago. I was totally disturbed by this. Yes. I'm not sure who actually has all the money, meaning I'm under the impression the Zimur family has always been a family of money. I don't know that for a fact, and I don't know where I got that impression from. But they've donated over $2.5 million to Scientology, Brooke and Nadia have. And I just find it hard to believe that Nadia has made so much money from her cookbooks and her Instagram that, I mean, it's totally possible that Nadia is the one who makes all the money, but I don't think so. But regardless of who makes the money or who makes more money, they have donated, aside from the possibly close to $1 million they've paid on all of their Scientology auditing and training, they've straight donated over $2.5 million to the IAS. Okay, Julia O'Connell. Wow, I had no idea she was a Scientologist. Yeah. C.O. Bilf. How do they let a guy with these propensities become an OT7 Class 9 auditor? Very out security. Yes. Rochelle, thank you so much for gifting a channel membership. I appreciate that. Vicky C. Look up Daniel Zimur. Article about him from 2012 trying to unalive himself so they would not let him leave. Vicky, can you email me a link to that? growingupinscientology@gmail.com. I would appreciate that. Cynthia G. Wait, the pasta queen is a Scientologist? Is that right? Yes, she's a high-level Scientologist. Acute pumpkin clodhopper. Get angry. Get angry, Aaron. Stay angry. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Magnus, Scientology is always worse than you think. Miss Kim, Aaron, thank you for exposing this. I see it must be hard, but it needs to be done. Yes. It is my pleasure to do it, even though it is not easy. Mrs. Bramlett Jr., this sounds a lot like Josh Duggar. Julia O'Connell, this was pure evil. How this could exist in our country is beyond me. Yeah. I see some nice comments, but I'm going to have to skip them for my benefit. Yes. All right, I'll try. Angie says, I'm so sorry you have to go through this triggering garbage every time, but OMG, you're so strong for bracing through it anyways to get out the info. You are a hero, Aaron, truly. Thank you, Angie. And sad to say, it's a small part of my trauma, but I'm a survivor and will keep on surviving, but nobody spoke up for me. So I have nothing but love for those who do the right thing. Thank you, Angie. I appreciate it. You know, once I know for sure, once I have official confirmation that a firm or firms have started to sign up Scientology, ex-Scientologist clients for this mass litigation against Scientology for sex trafficking and labor trafficking. And once I know for sure that there is one specific firm that I and all the rest of us can direct everybody to, it is going to give all of us ex-Scientologists on YouTube something really great to do videos about as often as possible, which is making everybody aware about the mass litigation, trying to find as many victims who are willing to come forward as possible. And I'm sure there will be some particular statute of limitations, you know, before which lawsuits probably can't be filed on their behalf. But even people whose experience might be past the statute of limitations. Oh, and by the way, arbitration agreements are not enforceable in cases of child sex abuse. So suck on that, Scientology. even people whose experience might be older or beyond the statute of limitations, those individuals can still serve as witnesses, and their stories are still incredibly valuable. So I'm looking forward to a day very, very soon when I can say definitively exactly what is happening and exactly who is doing it. Because I'm telling you guys, this is how Scientology will fall. All right, everyone, that is all I have for this evening. Thank you for hanging out with me, and I will see you tomorrow.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe right